It's Jack from B&T MacFarlane, and today we're going to go over how pallet forks affect the lift capacity of your tractor. So let's get into it. So a few weeks ago I made a video going over the lift capacity of the BX23s. We did that with just a bucket on. Today we're going to be doing it with a set of pallet forks and seeing how that affects the lift capacity. When you're looking at Kubota's brochures and spec sheets, it's not as cut and dry as just looking at the number and taking that as a given as the lift capacity. There's a lot of different factors that go into determining what your tractor will lift in certain scenarios. It depends what kind of ground you're on, how level, how flat it is, how much ballast you have in the back of your tractor. Do you have enough ballast? And then what attachments you have on the front. Do you have pallet forks? Do you have a bigger bucket, a smaller bucket, a grapple? And then the biggest thing that determines the lift capacity is how far away you are from those pivot pins. On a tractor, the lift capacity is measured right at the pivot pins. So that's what Kubota and every other major manufacturer is going to give you for a spec. The further away you get from those pivot pins, the lower your lift capacity should be in theory, because you're further away from the strongest point of the tractor. So I have the set of pallet forks here. I have the strap around the halfway point, which is going to simulate a full pallet of, say, interlock bricks that's evenly spaced across the pallet, or a pallet that is, again, evenly spaced in weight. And we're going to do the lift capacity tests at a few different heights, this one being right off the ground. So just being able to pick it up off the ground and just move it around your property, that should be the strongest. And then we're going to do one unloading out of the back of a pickup truck. And then again, lastly, it's going to be at the full height lift capacity with a set of pallet forks. So I'm going to start the tractor here. I am going to rev it up to full revs. So the tractors, the way they work is the higher you are in the rev range, the faster your loader is going to work, the faster your hydraulic pump's going to work. And in turn, that's going to mean you're going to get a lot more lift capacity. I do have enough ballast back here. The backhoe is adequate ballast for the BX23s. Another good solution would be a big heavy implement back there. Filled tires or a ballast box would work as well for enough ballast. That would be if you had the BX2380 or 2680. So turned on the tractor, gonna rev it up to full revs. So it was actually neat to do that test. I've never done that before, seen an exact weight of a BX23s with a set of pallet forks. That's kind of what I expected. If you remember from the video a few weeks ago, I will link that up above, but with a bucket almost at the pivot pins, it lifted about 780 pounds in the bucket just off the ground. So a set of pallet forks, give or take 2 feet away from the pivot pins, that makes sense. 400 pounds, it's not a number to laugh at. That'll lift up pretty much every single implement you can get for the BX, and then you're gonna lift a whole lot of stone, logs, stuff like that. And then again, naturally, as you get closer to the pivot pin on the forks, so if you put the load closer to the pallet fork frame, you're gonna have a number that's closer to what we saw with the bucket in the 700-800 pound mark. But this simulates picking up a pallet and moving that around your property, which a lot of people will use with the forks. So now I have the BX about halfway through its lift height. This is going to simulate unloading something, say, off of a 3-4 foot platform out of the back of a lower pickup truck, stuff like that. So I'm expecting it'll lift in the neighborhood of about 250, 300 pounds. So I'm going to fire it up and see where we end up. Again, going to bring it up to full RPMs. So we got up to about 385 pounds, which is a little bit surprising because that was basically what we had when it was just off the ground a few feet. So we might have to revisit that test at the end of the video and try that again. So now we're right at the top of the lift height. This is going to be in a scenario when you have to lift stuff up above your head. Say you're building a shed and you need to lift beams up high. Things like that, or loading into the top of a really high pickup truck or loading into a higher trailer. So I'm going to fire up the tractor and see how much we can lift. we lifted 275 pounds to the top of the lift height, which is actually a pretty impressive number given that it's pretty high up in the air. And if you remember from the bucket test, at the top of the height with the bucket, we were about 400 pounds. So again, if you were to put the load closer to the back of the pallet fork frame, you would get closer to that 400 pound mark. So I am going to try the first test again right off the ground. The first time around we got about 400 pounds. I don't think I had it quite high enough up in the rev range to get the true lift capacity. Given that about halfway up we were doing almost 400 pounds, so it should be a little bit more than that. I'm going to turn it on here and see what number we can get this time. So it looks like we got it up to just under 450 pounds, around 445 pounds, which makes a lot more sense than the first number that we got, given that we were at 445 right on the ground, about halfway up 375, and then right at the top we were at 275. So these numbers do check out in terms of being a little bit further away from the pivot pins in comparison to the bucket. So if you remember the bucket, at the very bottom we were able to lift about 785 pounds with the bucket. So forks being a little bit further out from the pivot pins were around 450 pounds. And again, like I mentioned during the video, if you were to move that load a little bit closer back to the pallet fork frame, you will get closer to that number that we did see with the bucket. I hope you guys found this video informative and gives you some good real world numbers when buying a BX and looking into getting a set of pallet forks. Because I know looking at the brochure, it only gives you that one number at the very top of the lift height at the pivot pin. So it's nice to see a real world demonstration of what you could expect to lift with your tractor. And as always, thank you guys for watching. If you're enjoying the videos, remember to like and subscribe. If you need help with parts, sales, or service, give us a call at 613-225-0555. Thank you.